Today we are strapping in for what might be one of our most ethically challenging deep dives yet, ahimsa.
Mm-hmm.
This principle of nonviolence, it's really the bedrock of Jain philosophy, right? But, well, applying it to the messy reality of modern life, it raises some really tough questions, some paradoxes that require serious engagement.
That's absolutely right. For many people, ahimsa, this idea of compassion for all living things, it sounds beautiful, but maybe impossible.
Exactly. Impossible.
So if you've ever wondered how practitioners actually navigate these ethical minefields, things like survival, food choices, self-defense, even modern consumption, well, this two-part series is definitely for you.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty simple, really. We're tackling the 5 toughest questions about ahimsa. We're going to combine ancient Jain ethical principles with insights from modern science, philosophy.
To give you some concrete, maybe actionable knowledge.
Yes. And we're jumping straight into the deep end. The biggest hurdle, maybe.
Yeah.
Just the mere act of existing. Okay, let's unpack this fundamental paradox first. How can ahimsa realistically be practiced when, breathing, walking, drinking water? It inevitably kills countless microorganisms. If survival itself requires destruction, isn't perfect nonviolence simply impossible?
Well, yes. It is impossible, and that's maybe the most profound takeaway right there. Jain philosophy actually acknowledges this. It's called unavoidable harm, or arambini himsa.
Arambini himsa.
Right, and the key insight here is that the goal isn't zero harm. That's like a fantasy.
Right.
It's the constant, conscious practice of minimizing your impact. That happens through right intention, heightened awareness, and, well, maximum carefulness.
But isn't relying just on intention a little easy? Like if I tried really hard not to pollute a river, but I still accidentally do it, does my internal state really matter to the fish?
That's a really crucial challenge. And the Jain answer tackles both intent and effort. The Tattvavarta Sutra, a key text, specifies that the true root of violence isn't just the accident itself, but pramata yoga. That means careless or negligent activity. So maximum effort becomes, well, a non-negotiable part of having the right intention.
Okay. So the effort has to be real.
Yeah.
And we actually see that effort physically shown in the practices of ascetics, right? That's where the rigor comes in.
Precisely, yeah. When you see ascetics filtering their water or maybe gently sweeping the path ahead with a little broom, it's called a pichi.
Oh, pichi, right.
Or wearing a mouth cover, the mupati. These aren't just symbolic, they're demonstrations of the utmost physical effort to reduce their impact because they recognize that life is just teeming everywhere.
So wait, they kind of knew, even without the microbiology, that they had to take these protective actions.
It seems so.
And this is where the ancient practice and modern science seem to align quite brilliantly. Our sources mention how Jains traditionally avoid certain activities, like eating after dark. Why would that be an ethical concern?
Well, it aligns beautifully with this idea of mindful action and, frankly, hygiene, which science now helps explain. We looked at research on UV radiation's germicidal effect.
Okay.
So UV light, which is obviously prevalent during the day, naturally inactivates microbes. It suppresses them.
Ah, I see. So the microbial risk, the pathogen load, it's technically lower during daylight hours.
Exactly. So the practice of avoiding consumption or complex activities after dark is, in a way, like a millennia-old public health guideline.
Wow.
It's a mindful action that scientifically just reduces the potential for unseen, avoidable microbial impact.
It's kind of proof, then, that prioritizing that effort and awareness leads to behaviors that are inherently less destructive.
Yeah.
Even if the original practitioners couldn't point to the UV spectrum on a chart thousands of years ago.
Precisely. It's about the commitment to minimizing harm.
Okay, so we've established that impossibility of zero harm demands maximum effort, conscious behavior.
Right.
But that leads us inevitably to the dinner plate.
Food.
If all plant life is sacred, why do Jains avoid roots? Potatoes, onions, garlic, but they seem perfectly happy eating fruits and leaves. What's the core difference there? How do they justify one kind of plant destruction but not the other?
Okay, so the distinction lies in the ethical calculus of disruption, really, and the magnitude of lives affected.
Magnitude, okay.
Jain texts classify root vegetables differently. They're often called anantakaya. That translates roughly to infinite-bodied.
Infinite-bodied, what does that mean?
It's this concept that a single root body, like a potato, hosts innumerable souls or life forms, tiny lives, all living in codependence within that structure.
Ah, okay, so like a whole ecosystem in one potato.
Kind of, yeah. So when you uproot it, you're not just killing the primary plant, you're destroying that plant and countless associated lives within and around it. Now contrast that with taking something that's Proteaceae single-bodied, like a fruit or leaves.
Right, like picking an apple.
Exactly. You're typically not destroying the whole organism or that whole community of life with the root. You might just be sort of borrowing a piece, and often it doesn't even kill the main plant.
It's actually remarkable how closely modern ecology seems to map onto this ancient concern about what's going on underground. We're talking about the rhizosphere here, aren't we?
Yes, exactly, the rhizosphere. Ecology defines this as that extremely dense, highly biodiverse zone immediately around the plant roots.
Right, I've read about that. It's packed with life.
It is. Research like that from Philippot and colleagues confirms this zone is just a complex, super dense web. Bacteria, fungi, worms, insects. It's an entire invisible community vital for soil health.
So when a farmer pulls up a carrot or a potato, they're actually doing far more than killing just one plant.
Much more.
They're essentially collapsing an entire, incredibly dense, biodiverse subterranean ecosystem.
That's the scientific validation, yes. Studies confirm that uprooting causes massive, widespread disruption and death within that complex biological web. So this ecological understanding, it really supports the Jain idea that uprooting roots causes a far greater magnitude of harm.
Than just picking a fruit or some leaves off the top.
Precisely.
Okay, this level of ethical distinction, thinking about magnitude of harm, naturally raises the next, and maybe tougher question. The hierarchy of life itself. If all life is sacred, and we're trying to minimize harm even to the subsurface ecosystem around roots, how is it justifiable to create a hierarchy where plants can be killed for necessary food, but animals absolutely cannot? Isn't that fundamentally valuing one life over another?
It is a hierarchy, but it's crucial to understand the basis for it. It's not about inherent value. Jainism holds that all life is inherently valuable.
Okay.
The hierarchy is based on the capacity for suffering. And this capacity is measured traditionally by the number of senses a being possesses. This is outlined in the Tattvartha Sutra.
Number of senses. How did that work?
Well, plants are considered one-sensed beings. They possess only the sense of touch, according to this framework.
Touch? Oh.
Right. But multi-sensed beings, ranging from, say, two-sensed insects up to five-sensed mammals like us, they experience progressively more complex forms of pain, fear, apprehension.
Ah, I see. So the complexity of experience matters.
Yes. Ahimsa prioritizes minimizing the greatest suffering, so the imperative to avoid harming animals who have more senses and a demonstrably higher capacity for complex suffering becomes far greater.
So in essence, they're saying the ethical priority goes to beings that can feel complex pain and fear. And, well, once again, modern science, specifically neurobiology, seems to provide data that helps draw that line.
It really does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can reference the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness from 2012.
Right, remember that. What did it say?
It was a statement by prominent neuroscientists affirming that non-human animals, especially vertebrates, possess the complex nervous systems, the pain receptors, the brain structures, everything required for conscious pain and suffering perception.
And that is the critical differentiator, isn't it? While plants definitely react to stimuli biochemically,
Yes, they react.
they demonstrably lack the neurological equipment, the substrates required for that subjective, complex, conscious experience of fear and pain that animals clearly have.
Exactly. So this scientific finding really differentiates the ethical response required towards animals. It validates the Jain hierarchy, which is built upon that observable capacity for greater, more complex suffering. It shifts the hierarchy from seeming like an arbitrary rule
To an ethically reasoned response aimed at minimizing complex pain.
precisely.
Okay, let's turn from the dinner table to moments of crisis now. What about self-defense? Does the strict adherence to ahimsa require total passivity if you're facing a violent threat? Does it mean you just have to surrender?
This is where we need to distinguish between the ethical paths laid out for different types of adherence. It's not quite the same for everyone.
Okay.
For ascetics, the monks and nuns, the ideal is absolute non-resistance. Their commitment to ahimsa is paramount, above personal safety even.
Total non-resistance. Wow.
But for householders, lay followers known as Shravaks, the path is more pragmatic. It recognizes societal duties, the need to protect life, your own, and others.
So for them, it's different.
Yes, defensive violence, which is known as virutini himsa, is permissible, but only as an absolute last resort.
Last resort.
And it's heavily constrained. It must be done with minimal passion, meaning without anger, hatred, or vengeance fueling it, and only to the necessary proportional extent required to stop the threat.
Minimal passion. That sounds incredibly difficult in the heat of the moment.
It is, and the overwhelming ethical goal, always, is to find a nonviolent resolution first. Violence is truly the final, regrettable option.
It's actually fascinating that an ethical framework from millennia ago already incorporates this kind of nuance, the kind we still grapple with today regarding justifiable force.
Absolutely. And if you connect these Jain constraints to, say, modern philosophical and legal doctrines, like those discussed in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy regarding justifiable force, you see some remarkable parallels.
You mean things like the legal and ethical reliance on principles like necessity, proportionality, and last resort?
Exactly those principles. Both systems, the ancient Jain framework for householders and modern legal ethical thought, demand exhausting nonviolent options first. And both insist that any force used must be only what's necessary and proportional to the actual threat. So for a householder, Jain philosophy provides this constrained ethical path that really echoes the core principles of modern concepts of justifiable self-defense.
Always prioritizing minimum violence, even when defense becomes necessary.
That's the essence of it for the lay practitioner.
Okay, our final question for part 1 today really addresses the sheer complexity of modern life itself. I mean, we live surrounded by indirect harm, don't we?
Constantly. It's everywhere.
Think about medicine testing on animals, technology's huge environmental toll, complex global supply chains, even pest control and agriculture. How does ahimsa guide decision-making when the harm is so often hidden, systemic, maybe even unavoidable?
Yeah, this is maybe the toughest everyday challenge, since indirect harm really pervades almost everything we do.
Right.
The path requires, first, trying to choose the lesser harm whenever possible, and second, strictly adhering to the principle of right livelihood.
Right livelihood.
Meaning consciously avoiding professions that are inherently based on direct, large-scale violence or exploitation. Things like butchery, weapons manufacturing, maybe pesticide production.
Okay, so avoid the obvious large-scale harm professions.
Right.
But for the rest of modern life, the indirect stuff.
For that, the focus really shifts to awareness, ethical consumption, and active minimization of your personal impact. It's less about finding a perfect solution, because there often isn't one, and more about an ongoing process, an ethical engagement, really.
Yeah.
Accepting the complexity, but without abandoning the effort to reduce your footprint.
So it's an acknowledgement that we can't be perfect, but we have to constantly evaluate our impact. But how do you even measure that kind of indirect harm? Like, you can't easily see the destruction caused by, say, your smartphone supply chain.
That's a fantastic question, and that's where modern science actually steps in again, not to provide the ethics, but to provide a tool. It gives us a technical metric for tracking those ethical consequences that Jainism insists we need to be aware of and own.
A technical metric.
Yes. The scientific tool that aligns almost perfectly with this concern over hidden indirect harm is the life cycle assessment, or LCA. You see organizations like the US EPA utilizing this.
Life cycle assessment, right?
Yeah.
That basically quantifies the full environmental and ethical impact, emissions, resource use, waste, everything.
From cradle to grave.
Of modern products and services.
Yeah.
From creation all the way to disposal.
Exactly. So this methodology, LCA, it confirms and scientifically validates that ancient Jain concern, that seemingly benign modern actions often have these really far-reaching, hidden, indirect consequences.
So LCA doesn't give you the ethical answer.
No, it doesn't tell you what's right or wrong.
But it provides the technical clarity you need to even begin that ongoing ethical effort, that work of minimizing hidden harm that Jainism asks for.
Precisely. It makes the invisible a bit more visible, allowing for more informed choices. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, what these deep dives really show us, I think, is that ahimsa isn't some unachievable, simplistic rulebook. Not at all.
No.
Instead, it seems to be a really robust, actually quite sophisticated framework for conscious, compassionate living. One that demands constant effort, constant awareness, especially when you're grappling with these tough paradoxes of survival and modernity.
That's well put. And we've focused entirely on the external challenges today, haven't we? Microbes, food, defense, supply chains.
Right. The outside world.
Next time, in part 2, we'll explore the internal challenges. Things like intention, emotion, hypocrisy, how one makes progress. even how ahimsa views the violence within nature itself.
Ah, the internal landscape. That sounds fascinating, too.
But maybe for now, here's something to consider. How much of the modern global scientific push towards sustainability, towards quantifying environmental impact with the tools like LCA, how much of that is actually a kind of secular technical application of these very ancient philosophical concerns about minimizing unavoidable indirect harm?
That's a really fascinating synthesis to mull over. Is modern sustainability just ancient ethics in new clothes? Okay, definitely join us next time for part 2 of our Ahimsa deep dive, where we tackle that internal world of nonviolence.
We hope you will.
As always, all our source materials, including the studies we mentioned, are linked in the show notes for you to explore further. Thanks for diving deep with us.